Okay. All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. George, do you mind opening us in prayer before we get started? Thanks, Father, for the food and ask him to guide our conversation tonight.
We just come to you tonight. Just thank you, Father, for the men's meeting this being launched again, Father. We just love to be in your presence, but also be in presence of one another. We thank you for bringing us here and saving the comment. Pray for the discussion. Guide our thoughts, guide, Father, the very subject. Open our hearts and minds and word. We are to take in, Father. We always want to sit at your feet to hear and to be on, Father. And at times there's some things that are of correction that we have, Father. So we just thank you that just entering into this, Father, to have that moment, to have that time, Father, where you open up our hearts and minds and just impart the precious word. Thank you for your son. Thank you for who he is and knowing that revelation where we're at this time, Father, and we're going to take that. Just bless us in this discussion tonight, our families, our loved ones, Father, and keep us all, Father, and save our covenant that you provide. And we thank you for that. Choose me.
Amen. Thank you. All right, September 6th, 2023. Continuing on, this is lesson 2 of discovering the Jewish Messiah through the tongue, the Hebrew language, Torah, including the court rulings, and temple, liturgy, and ancient Near East legal context. And I think I shared this with you guys before, though, that it had really concerned Bo and I that people were discovering Torah and then all of a sudden thinking they needed to abandon Messiah to truly follow down the path of Torah. And what we've seen over the past several years of diligent study is there's anything but that Torah doesn't work without Messiah. None of this works without the Father working through Messiah with us, with all Israel.
Have you started your timer?
How do I do that?
No.
Oh, this timer. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You're a good man. I don't care what they say.
I'll start it for you.
He's channeling my wife. I bet you she texts you, huh? Absolutely. All right.
So just click the mouse right there.
Okay.
There you go. Sure.
All right. Let's go over the principles again real quick. Professor John Walton, the Bible's written for us, but not to us. It's up to us to figure out what the mindset was, the understanding was of those that would have been hearing what was said in Scripture. And that's the path we're on. Part of that is that Hebrew names describe the legal function, whether it be a person or a thing or an event. Hebrew defines function, which is why a name like Jesus, J, has only been around 500 years. Go to someone on the streets of Jerusalem, do you believe in Jesus? Jesus, you should say Yeshua, Yehoshua, they'll understand that means Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh saves. And so that's how Hebrew works. In addition to having an understanding of Hebrew, the scriptures speak in temple language all the way from Genesis to Revelation. And we're going to continue to see that. The last point for us to remember is when a lawful representative speaks, it's as if the one who sent him, the principal, is speaking. And last week we quoted John 12:49 and 50. And if someone wants to read that again for us, just to refresh our mind.
For I have not spoken on my own authority, but the Father who sent me has himself given me a commandment, what to say and what to speak. And I know that his commandment is eternal life. What I say, therefore, I say as the Father has told me.
Thank you. And down the road, we'll talk about the Trinity a little bit more, but we saw a statement this last week about the Trinity, that they were separate, but equal, co-equal, united as one. Well, we can just tell from even this one verse that they are not equal. There is a pecking order. We know the Father sent the Son, and then the Son, before he departed, said he was going to send the Ruach. So there is a chain of command. And we'll dig more into that more, but even just on the plain English meaning, in my opinion, you can see that there is the highest authority anywhere is the Father. All right, let's review what we talked about, the word or the memra. Remember, John 1 talks about the memra created everything, was with God and was God, and that the memra became flesh and dwelt among us. We trace that back to the Aramaic Targums, which were Aramaic translations of the Tanakh, specifically Targum Onkelos, which translates the first 5 books of the Bible to Aramaic. And any place where YHVH is used, or even Elohim is used in an anthropomorphic or human-like way, the word is inserted because the Father has no form. And so this is how they would differentiate. So Aramaic differentiates between YHVH and the one who bears his name or exercises his complete authority in created time and space. In Hebrew, the difference between YHVH and the one who bears his name is often determined by text. We talked about with Sodom and Gomorrah, YHVH called the YHVH to send down fire from heaven. Or Exodus 33, where Moses met face to face with YHVH outside the camp, but then went up on top of the mountain and asked to see his glory. And YHVH said, "No man can look upon my face and live." And so the difference is the principal YHVH, who we would also call the Father, and the one who bears the name of YHVH, who we would call the Word, and who ultimately came in the flesh as Yeshua. So the one who came in the flesh as Yeshua, YHVH says, was called YHVH before Matthew 1. After his resurrection, was called YHVH at the right hand of Psalms 110. And this one it's kind of a tricky one because in the Masoretic text, the Masoretic texts are the oldest Hebrew texts that we have or had before we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. But so you look in Psalm 110 and it looks like it's Adonai. But then you look in the notes of the Masoretic text and it says this is one of, I can't remember, it's either 130 something, 140 something times in the Masoretic text, they changed YHVH to Adonai and put a note on the side. So you might get someone that comes back and say, well, he's not called YHVH, he's called Adonai. Tell them, go look at the notes of the Masoretic text. You say that at a party and people will notice. So he in his right hand is it has been given the full name YHVH, the existing one, back, and is functioning as the Melchizedek, the King of Righteousness. And when he returns, Revelation 19:13 says his name is the word of YHVH, but we know that's Aramaic. So we know in Hebrew, when he returns, his name will be YHVH. He is the one who bears the name of the Father. And he will only speak what the Father tells him to speak, just like he has always done.
What is that? YHVH is the name above all names?
Yes, absolutely.
Cannot be changed, cannot happen without that authority.
That's right. And the only way you get to the Father is through the Son. You go through YHVH to get to the one who has been revealed by YHVH as YHVH. So, love it. So, yeah. So even, everyone who's praying to Hashem, Adonai, and they mean the name, they are praying through the Son to the Father. Okay. Tonight, we're going to talk about the legal parties represented in the temple. And this is really important in my mind. This is the foundation for those of us especially those of us who grew up in the church and are discovered Torah and are on our way to discover deeper how we're supposed to worship the Father through the Son. And some people will tell you, well, let's not do spiritual first. Well, I will tell you, legal is not spiritual. And we've talked about the Pardes, the 4 levels of revelation in Scripture, that one can't compete with the other. The highest level, or the foundation level, is the Peshat, or plain meaning. So I would submit that the legal part of understanding is the most important part of the plain meaning. And even some of my good colleagues who study the temple and study the Torah don't understand this part yet. And in my mind, because they haven't understood this part yet, they don't fully understand where Mashiach is in the Torah. And so they kind of, even those that haven't rejected Messiah, they have minimized Messiah or put him on a shelf, so not to cause controversy or whatever. So we all know here, there's a lot of controversy about who Yeshua is and who he, all that kind of stuff. But in my mind, if you systematically look at the ancient Near East legal format and then put that in using Hebrew terms to guide you, you look at the temple and then you can kind of sort things out, and it helps a lot. So I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. I'm just here to offer up some tools that I think will help us as we seek out who the Father is, who the Son is, and then who we are because of those covenants that Abraham entered into way back when, and we have decided to become a part of.
And I think Deuteronomy 29:19 speaks specifically to that.
You want to read that?
Which is, the secret things belong unto Adonai or Elohim, but the things that are revealed, things that are physical, the things that we see, that he has given to us, belong unto us and to our children forever, that we may do all the works of this Torah.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
this portion is specific to this as well, and focuses on, we need to focus on the revealed pieces that we can see,
right,
not on spiritual pieces that we don't understand yet.
That's right. But and I 100% agree, but we can't mix the legal piece with the spiritual piece. We keep those separated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The legal piece being physical, that's the revealed aspect.
Right. That's how we understand the Father, through what has been revealed to us through the Son. And we'll see, first and foremost, there's legal things that he put into place. Just like first and foremost, in a marriage is a legal relationship. Anybody who's been divorced understands that if it just stays as that bland legal relationship, it's going to end in divorce. A relationship needs to grow out of that. But first and foremost, it's a legal relationship. We're actually in a legal relationship in this room right now. We come across this threshold here, and there's a certain duty of care that New Beginnings and Olive Tree has to all of us. If there's some gross negligence, like the roof falls in and kills you three and hurts me, then I'm going to have a lawsuit. First of all, because I'm hurt, but second of all, because the stress, the emotional distress of seeing you guys lose your lives. So, but
we'll hope that doesn't happen.
That's right. We'll just believe that won't happen. Okay, back to the legal parties represented in the temple.
Okay.
So first,
This is what we get timer.
the next scenario, I'll make sure I'm among the dead. How's that? So, all right. So first, YHVH Elohim, and we'll refer to him as the Father. So he is represented by the Ark, Ma'al Kapporet, Mabin, Shene, Cherubim. I'm sorry, Cherubim. Sorry, above the cover between two cherubs. So it's not the ark. We'll see. It's that area above the ark between the two cherubs. And when we talk about the two cherubs, always go back to Gan Eden and when man is thrown out of the garden, because where you see those two cherubs on the ark, or you see those two cherubs on the curtains that divide the holy place from the most holy place, think legal boundary. It's the legal boundary between time and space and eternity. So where the Father dwells is eternity. So that's above the ark. And it's really a beautiful picture, because we'll look again at Exodus 24 when the 10 words, the 10 Devarim are given, and Moses and the elders and the priests go up and have a covenant meal on the side of the mountain with the revealed YHVH, the word of YHVH. And so who is covering that on the top of the mountain is the Father. That's where the Father is. After they finish that covenant meal, Moshe, representing the bride of Israel, and the word went up into what was essentially the same as the top of the Ark of the Covenant. So what's cool about that is you look at the Ark, in the ark, is the covenant, is the Tin Devarim that recognize the marriage between the word of YHVH, Messiah, and Israel. And who is over it? The Father, just like on Mount Sinai. So it's a continual reminder of the marriage between Messiah and Israel. So first marriage, right? So we'll get to that. So the ark is where the Father dwells. The word of YHVH Elohim, that we call the word, he is represented by the menorah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And finally, Abraham, because remember his name changed, and his descendants of promise, which becomes the 12 tribes of Israel, which is represented by the table of the bread of the faces. These are the three legal parties in the tabernacle and then the temple. And this is important because as we get to when we start looking into the liturgy and how we worship and what we do at certain times, we'll start seeing the interplay between these three parties. And then as you're doing that liturgy, your mind will explode as you're like, oh, this is the Messiah doing this. This is the Father doing this. This is us doing this. And it's just beautiful. And then, quite frankly, all those that are coming out of Christianity, when it's time for them to come out and time is short, we can explain this to them. Hey, you don't have to abandon Messiah. In fact, you're going to learn more closely and accurately about Messiah than you ever imagined. So some of us that have been out in the wilderness for a little while trying to figure this stuff out, they won't have time to go through all that. It'll be like, here's where you go, here's where you stand, type of thing.
Don't step there.
That's right. Don't sit there. Okay. So holiness. So Michael's going through the Hebrew course now. George, you've been through the Hebrew course. Bo, you've been doing holiness a long time. So Kodesh, right? Kodesh, holiness. The first time it's used, and the only time holy is used in the book of Genesis, is in Genesis 2:3 in connection with the Shabbat. So in created time and space, holiness is defined by time and space, excuse me. The focal point of time and space is the temple, the place where he has placed his name. If you think about it, our Moedim, our appointed times, they're all focused on the temple. So it's the place, and it gets progressively holier the closer you get to the throne of the Father. So no man is called holy in the Tanakh. So no man is called holy in Tanakh. People confuse the term a righteous man, with a holy man. So in some translations, 2 Kings 4:9, it's referring to Elisha by the Shunammite woman, and a lot of translations say, but he is a holy man of God. But for those of us that have taken Hebrew, I went ahead and put this up. It says he, for or because, ish, man, Elohim, God, kadosh, holy, who is he? So I think a better translation than he is a holy man of God is he is a man of a holy God. That makes sense.
He's a bit of a set apart.
The Father is the most set apart because he's in eternity. So she when she referred to holy, she wasn't referring to Elisha. It doesn't make sense that he's the only man and he did a lot of great things, but for him to be the only man referred to a holy God or a holy person wouldn't make any sense. But also look at even how it plays out. The word holy is closer to Elohim than it is to man. So I believe they're talking about his God being holy, not him being holy. Oh, and I highly recommend. How do I go back, Bo? Arrow. I highly recommend this book by Joshua Berman because this totally changed my world on thinking about holiness and understanding. It's like we throw out holy all the time, but it's tied to time and space. And if we understand the Father's house and its function, we will see that holiness is all about the times to meet at the Father's house, the place to meet at the Father's house, and obviously the holiest time is Yom Kippur. Why? Because that's when the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, goes into and stands before the Holy of Holies, or the Most Holy, and stands before the ark. So all holiness is related to the temple in time and space. Okay, speaking of the most holy place versus the holy place, just a quick rundown on their functions. So the Kodesh HaKodeshim, Holy of Holies or Most Holies, is outside time and space. It's marked by the two Cherubim or cherubs that are outside the curtain, separating the most holy and the holy, and it's a place where the Ark of the Covenant is set. So interesting. Well, actually, I'll get to that when we talk about the Ark. So the high priest enters once a year dressed in white on Yom Kippur. I'm really excited about the time we go through Yom Kippur, because you will see, I believe, once we go through the service, that this is the high priest foreshadowing what Yeshua did for us when he died, resurrected, and went before the Father, and then came out, and then he went back before the Father again. And that's why the high priest only goes dressed in white. He doesn't have his royal garb, because he wears the royal garb when he's within this time and space. When he goes outside time and space before the Father, he is not functioning as the Israel's high priest. He is cloaked in the likeness of the Melchizedek. He's foreshadowing that. So, and when we get to real graduate levels and get into Ezekiel and start seeing when Messiah comes back, how some of the the temple services change a little bit. We'll talk about this some more, but that's way down the road. For now, just know that this is all about what Mashiach did when he rose and went before the Father on our behalf. So that's the most holy place. The holy place is known as the Hekal, or the palace. It is the palace of our King Messiah, and because the high priest bears the name, he is dressed as the one who bears the name. So when he is within created time and space, within the holy place, he is dressed as the one who bears the name. He literally has the name on his crown. It says for Adonai, for Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. He has the garb, he has the Urim and Thummim, he has the markings of the 12 tribes, he has the royal colors, because he represents King Messiah in created time and space. So when he's here, he represents King Messiah in created time and space. When he goes into the most holy place, he represents the Melchizedek, the high priest Messiah. And so that's what the Messiah is, only the king here within created time and space. When he goes before the Father, he is our high priest. And so that's why the change of clothes. So when Messiah returns, we'll get to the point, we'll see even in the temple where there is an office of the Messiah that has never been used before. So in the holy place is the menorah and the table of the bread of the faces. The menorah is serviced twice daily at both Tamid services, at the very first service and at the very last service of the day. The bread is replaced every Shabbat. And also within the holy place is the altar of incense, and we'll get into the legal implications of altars pretty soon. But a priest can offer incense in the holy place only one time in his life. And that's what Zechariah was doing when he was told that he was going to become a father. He was doing that one time. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the Ark, the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark. If someone wants to read that verse.
And there I will meet with thee, and I will speak with thee from above the ark, from between the two cherubim, which are upon the ark of the testimony. All things which I give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel.
Okay.
Chapter 25, 22, and so on.
Right. So it's, again, that space, above the cover and between the two cherubs is where the Father dwells. And it's interesting, because he says that, and then you look at, again, in the Hebrew, and YHVH is talking to Moshe, all kinds of other different places, like, why would that be the case? And then you go back to number 7, just before Aaron and his sons are inaugurated, and again, it talks about that YHVH talks to Moshe at this place, above the cover between the two cherubs. It's like, well, what, he's been talking to him all these other places, why are you bringing this up again? And it's, again, it's the Father speaking, or is the Father speaking through the Word? And when the Father speaks through the Word, it can be a place, I'm sorry, when the Father speaks, the level of holiness is, of location is higher. So the Word can speak at a lower level of holiness, like when he speaks face to face with them in the Ohel Moed, or tent of meeting, because that's space that the Word can occupy. The Father can't occupy anything less than most holy. Okay, outside of time and space, so there is verbiage in the Talmud. I didn't put it in today, but it is basically the Holy of Holies was 20 cubits by 20 cubits. So you would think that there's 20 cubits, and then the ark is in the middle. The line, the distance from the edge of the ark to the corner would be 10, would be less than 10. And then from this edge of the ark to the other side would be less than 10. But the reality is they measured 10 cubits. So whether you're talking about the whole distance, it's 20 cubits, or you're talking about the distance from the edge of the ark to the wall and the other edge of the ark to the wall, that's also 20 cubits. Why? Because the Father's presence is there, and it's outside of time and space, and it's beyond the laws of nature, the laws of physics in this world. We'll talk more about, we've talked before, we'll talk some more about what happened in quote unquote Dagon's temple, but also on the way back, and when Uzzah was, when they were put the Father's ark on the ox cart, and it was going up, and the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out to stable the ark. Well, he died. Why? Because in where the Father is, there is no free will other than the way the Father has explicitly expressed it. He said specifically how to carry the ark. It had to be the Levites that had to be on poles, and they were not doing that. And so it cost them their life. It doesn't have to do with guilt or innocence. It has to do with that's in the Father's presence, which is why the Father created this space that we live in now, is so we have the ability to choose to reject or accept the Father and his instructions. So, any questions on the ark before we move on? Tornado?
That was a weird, I never, that setting, I don't know, that was my first one, sorry about that.
Okay. All right. So let's go on to the menorah. So the menorah is in the holy place, not the most holy place. It's on just outside the curtain between the holy place and the most holy place on the southern side. So it's the candelabra, and it's got 7 branches but it's really, if you look in the middle, there's 1 candle, and out of that branches 6 additional branches. So the westernmost candle is called the Ner Ma'aravi, and it is closest to the most holy place. And all of the other candles have to be lit off that westernmost candle, and that westernmost candle can only be lit from coals that come off the outer altar. So when we look at this, think about 1 + 6. So if someone wants to read Isaiah 11, 1 and 2.
And there shall come forth a shoot out of the stock of Jesse, and a branch out of his roots shall bear fruit. And the spirit of Adonai shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Adonai.
Okay, so the stock of Jesse means,
David.
right, David and his lineage. So this is the Messiah that's supposed to come through the line of David. And we're talking about a sevenfold spirit here, because but it's the spirit of Adonai, it's the spirit of YHVH, but out of that comes 6 branches: spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and fear of Adonai. So that's exactly what we have here. So we know, first of all, this is evidence that it represents the Messiah that's coming from David. So, and then we'll go to Revelation 1:12-18.
Revelation
12-18.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. I turned to see the voice that spoke with me. Having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among the lampstands was one like a son of man, clothed with a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. His head and his hair were white as white wool, like snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. His feet were like burnished brass, as if it had been refined in a furnace. His voice was like the voice of many waters. He had 7 stars in his right hand. Out of his mouth proceeded a sharp 2-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining at its brightness. When I saw him, I fell at his feet like a dead man. He laid his right hand on me, saying, "Don't be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the living one. I was dead, and behold, I am alive forever and ever. Amen. I have the keys of death and Sheol."
Okay, thank you. So we saw in Isaiah that this represents the one who comes through the seed of David, the stock of Jesse, has a sevenfold spirit upon him. We see from Revelation, this is the resurrected Messiah who is standing in the place of the Ner Ma'arabi, the westernmost candle, showing that he is the one who fulfilled this prophecy. And then finally we have John 8:12. If anybody's got that.
Yeshua spoke to them again, saying, "I am the light of the world. The one who follows me will no longer walk in darkness, but will have the light of life."
So just a couple comments. I've taught on the woman caught in adultery that comes just before that. I believe it is scripture. I believe it's in the wrong place. One reason I believe it's the wrong place is because this passage that Yeshua is talking about is during, if you remove this, it's during Sukkot, and Sukkot is the original festival of lights. This is when they lit the candelabras, the huge candelabras in the court of the women that represented the fire that led them through the desert for 40 years. But it is also connected to the menorah. And the menorah in certain places is specifically referred to as the light of the world. In fact, there were windows in the temple where the small part was on the inside and the larger part was on the outside. The implication being the light was going out to the world. So the menorah was referred to as the light of the world. So when Yeshua said this, he was saying, yes, I am the light of the world. Yes, that menorah represents me. Yes, these candelabras that are 75 feet tall or something like that, the 4 of them in the court of the women that represent the pillar of fire that went with you for those 40 years. Yes, that represents me as well. So that's some pretty good evidence, in my opinion, as to what the menorah represents. So across the room on the northern side, of the holy place is the table, the bread and the faces. And so we don't know exactly what they will look like. Best evidence that we have in terms of how they were folded and positioned and stuff, they look like they're 12 altars, 12 altars of bread, which is important because the word and Abraham, as we will see, entered into all the covenants represented in the temple. The covenants were accepted by Isaac, Jacob, and ultimately the 12 tribes of Israel, both collectively and individually / equally. So in Exodus 24, the marriage at Mount Sinai, that's when all Israel entered into marriage with the word. However, in number 7, we have that's where they each by tribe bring the exact gifts. And it's like reading each of the 12 tribes, and then you read the list, it's the same thing over and over. It's like this extremely long chapter. When I first started this, we say, we read the gifts, and it said this applies to this tribe, this tribe, this tribe. So you didn't read the whole thing. But all that's there for a reason, is because it was a legal transaction happening at the dedication of the altar, that these, as one, they are Israel in covenant with the word of YHVH, but they are also individual legal pieces of the whole. 12 individual legal pieces of the whole.
All 12 tribes have to show up.
Well, that's the requirement, yes, and they did. However, it's also that a single tribe or several, we'll see that there was 10, can be cut off or divorced from the Mount Sinai marriage covenant, but once those tribes are unable to return to the land, the death of the grantor, who was the word, we will show you it was the word, his death is demanded. And we talked about this in Genesis 15 before, we'll talk about it again in even more detail. So we'll just keep that at the back of the mind. So just to recap, the ark, and more specifically above the ark, represents the presence of the Father. The menorah represents the Son, or the word of YHVH, and the table of the bread of faces represents a complete united Israel. All right, so that sets us up. So next week, we're going to dig into threshold covenants, and it's the foundation of everything. That's the first covenant that we're going to see the word on behalf of the Father enters into with Abram. So with that, we'll transition over to the temple app. Go ahead and pull that up. Well, if I did that, we'll expand it on there.
Yeah, sure.
So we can't do
Can't do full screen.
full screen. Okay. All right. So this is what the Father's house looked like during Yeshua's day. And we'll first, thanks to Hatikva Ministries for allowing us to use their temple app. I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the most reliable ones we have today, based on decades of research. Even the Jewish yeshivas in Israel that are preparing the priests and the Levites for temple service use this app. So we're not going to go through very much today, but as we get into the services, we will expand in detail quite a bit. So. All right. So this is I am standing right now in the court of Israel. This is looking at the altar. Let's see. For tonight, we're just going to go around. I'm not sure what just happened.
You went through the door.
Yeah. Forgive me, guys. So I'm gonna go up the 3 steps called the Dukan. So up these 3 steps, if I was to turn around, this is where the Levitical singers stand and face away from the temple during the temple service. This is all the most holy offerings have to be slaughtered on the north side of the altar. So that's where what we're looking at right now. I'm gonna go ahead and continue forward, and we're gonna go through this veil here, up these steps to the porch. It's called the Ulam, and that veil is the veil that ripped when Yeshua died. We know that is the veil because that is the one that they could see, and we'll actually see inside that between the most holy place and the holy place, there's actually 2 veils, 2 curtains, and we'll talk about why that is later. So on there, some people get really upset when they see that there looks like a sun and the something, they're thinking it's like bad symbols. But again, think kind of like with the cherubs, don't think image, think legal purpose. So the cherubs mark the boundary between time and space and eternity. Any thoughts on what this curtain represents?
The witnesses.
2 witnesses. Who are the Father's 2 witnesses from the beginning? From Genesis 1:1. He created the witnesses first. George?
I just now know.
Yeah, you can stand up if you need to, or whatever. Yeah.
What was the question?
So who are the Father's witnesses that are represented on this curtain here?
Oh, it's the word?
So on the curtain
Right
is,
here.
right, there's
Yeah.
2 witnesses there. Any thoughts, Michael?
Earth and, I mean,
Okay, or it's.
the sun is on. I didn't want to say the sun, but I was
The
thinking
sun is in the heavens.
the heavens, there we go.
So Genesis
Yeah,
1:1
okay.
created the heavens as
And the
earth.
earth.
He created the witnesses first to stand as witnesses for everything he does.
So these little icons here, that's what these 2.
On the curtain, yes.
No,
No, not the icon, but
Not the 2 blue ones.
the-
Okay, that's what I was looking
yeah,
at.
the
That's
curtain.
why I said the word.
The curtain, this
Okay,
curtain that we're about to go through.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're gonna go through this curtain. We'll talk about
awesome.
a lot of this stuff later. We'll go through these doors. And we'll talk about the weird things that happened after Yeshua died and resurrected that changed stuff. But you'll see on the south side, here's the menorah. I actually don't think that that's how it was positioned. I think it was positioned 90 degrees, and actually I think the actual menorah was actually like in a wedge. You see when geese fly south for the winter,
Right.
and I think it was like that. And I think the center one, the Ner Ma'aravi, the western one that was closest to the Father, was positioned that way. I'm not the only one that thinks that, but TBD. I think the one on the arch, this is based on the one off the Arch of Titus. I'm not convinced that that's the correct one, but that's basically where it's going to be positioned. So on the other side is the table of showbread. You see it positioned here. They kind of look like little altars, and we'll talk about that later, about the whole idea of threshold covenant. So we're going to go forward. That's why I'm not a Cohen, because I walk around like a drunk. All right, so here's the altar, past the altar is incense. I'm going to go through the curtain to the Holy of Holies. And we'll look around. And we don't, it's just an empty room, right? Why is that? Well, this is during Yeshua's day.
We didn't have.
There was no ark during Yeshua's day. There was no ark during the second temple. The last time we know of the ark was during King Josiah's day. It's mentioned there, so it was not in there. The services were exactly the same, with the exception on Yom Kippur, something was a little bit different because the ark was not there. But I think I'm gonna stop there for now, so this is gonna get really interesting with all the functioning, and we'll talk about how this works when millions and millions and millions of people come in to worship. But for me, yeah, the 613 commandments and then all the court rulings on top of that, all that's great. But I want to know first, who am I in relationship with? I don't mind having rules with my wife and we, if we're going to spend this much money, we have this agreement and it's my job to clean the toilets on this week, or I don't mind any of that. But first and foremost, I want to know who I'm married to.
Right.
So, and this is, who are we in covenant with? And that's why I think it's important we start with who are the legal parties in this temple, and how do we grow that relationship based upon that knowledge, not that it's just some unknown God somewhere, or and Jesus did away with the law, and so this doesn't even matter anymore. And I think we'll see this in a total different way. So, well, okay. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, well, if you can just show me real quick how to switch back, just so I can show the threshold covenant up.
So you can stop share?
There's some, of review what we've had, and most of us here are in Midrash, so.
Correct. Okay, so
Let's get this back in. Here. Now you.
So have either of you looked at the threshold covenant by Trumbull?
No.
It's online for free. The PDF is online for free, so I highly recommend it. You even read the first chapter and just take notes on the first, it will blow your mind. But I highly recommend that you look at it before we meet the next time. I know I've talked about threshold covenant or not, or many times before, but this is, when this clicks in, it's so much easier to not only build on top of this, to see the other covenants that Abram and the Word entered into, but it's very easy to see what happened to these threshold covenants when Messiah died, when Messiah resurrected, and when he entered into eternity with the Father on our behalf. So by Bo's timer, I'm out of time. So all right, guys.
Threshold covenant?
Yes.